You walk into a gun shop. The guy behind the counter tells you that 45 ACP has more stopping power than 9mm. He says you should rack your shotgun to scare intruders. He says if you have to shoot someone, aim for the leg so you do not kill them. And you believe him because it sounds right, because everyone says it, because you saw it in a movie, but it is all wrong. These myths have been debunked 1,000 times. The evidence is clear, the experts agree, and yet these myths refuse to die. Today we are breaking down the gun myths that will not go away no matter how much evidence proves them wrong. Stopping power, racking shotguns, shooting to wound, bullet tumbling, and why Hollywood has lied to you for decades. By the end of this video, you will know the truth, and you will never repeat these myths again. Subscribe right now because this is the information the gun industry does not want you to know. No myths, no Hollywood, just facts. Let's go. Before we dive into specific myths, let me explain why these myths persist. First, they sound logical. Bigger bullet equals more damage. Racking a shotgun equals intimidation. Shooting legs equals less lethal. These statements have internal logic. The problem is reality does not care about logic. It cares about physics and biology. Second, these myths are repeated by people who should know better. Gun shop employees, range officers, instructors. When authority figures repeat myths, people believe them. Third, Hollywood reinforces these myths in every action movie. Characters rack shotguns dramatically. Bad guys fly backwards when shot. Heroes shoot guns out of hands. After seeing this 1,000 times, your brain accepts it as real. And fourth, these myths serve commercial interests. The stopping power myth sells bigger calibers at higher prices. The tactical myth sells accessories and training courses. Follow the money and you find the source of most myths. Now let's break them down one by one. Myth number 1, stopping power. This is the biggest and most persistent myth in firearms. The idea is simple. Bigger caliber equals more stopping power. A 45 ACP stops threats better than a 9mm. A 357 Magnum stops threats better than a 38 Special. Bigger is better, and it is completely wrong. Here is the reality. Handgun calibers do not have stopping power. None of them. Not 9mm, not 45, not 357, not 10mm. Handguns wound. They do not knock people down. They do not throw people backwards. They do not create instant incapacitation. When a handgun bullet hits a person, it creates a wound channel. The bullet crushes tissue as it passes through. That is it. The size difference between a 9mm hole and a 45 caliber hole is minimal. We are talking about 0.1 inches. That does not translate to significantly more damage. What stops a threat is shot placement and psychology. If you hit the central nervous system, the brain or the spine, the threat stops instantly. This is true regardless of caliber. A 22 to the brain stops someone. A 45 to the shoulder does not. If you do not hit the central nervous system, the threat stops when they decide to stop, either because they realize they are shot and give up, or because they lose enough blood to lose consciousness. Blood loss takes time, seconds to minutes depending on what you hit. And again, caliber makes minimal difference. A 9mm through the heart causes the same blood loss as a 45 through the heart. The FBI studied this extensively. They analyzed thousands of shootings. Their conclusion: modern 9mm defensive ammunition performs identically to 45 ACP in real-world shootings. The stopping percentage is the same. The number of rounds to incapacitation is the same. There is no measurable difference. So why does the myth persist? Because gun companies make more money selling 45 ACP than 9mm. Because old-timers grew up believing it and refuse to change. And because it feels right even though it is wrong. If you carry a 9mm, you are not undergunned. If you carry a 45, you are not overgunned. Shot placement matters. Caliber does not. End of story. Myth number 2, racking the shotgun. This myth says that if you hear an intruder, you should rack your shotgun loudly. The sound will scare them away. You do not even need to shoot. Just rack it and they run. This myth is Hollywood fantasy and tactical stupidity. Here is why. First, if your shotgun is not already loaded and ready, you are doing home defense wrong. Your defensive shotgun should be stored with a full magazine and an empty chamber if you have kids, or a full magazine and a loaded chamber if you do not. Either way, when you pick it up, you rack it once to chamber a round, and you are ready. You do not wait to rack it for dramatic effect. Second, racking the shotgun tells the intruder exactly where you are. Congratulations, you just gave away your position. If the intruder is armed, he now knows where to shoot. You traded surprise for intimidation. That is a bad trade. Third, the assumption that racking a shotgun scares intruders is based on the assumption that intruders are rational actors who will flee when confronted. Some will, but some will not. Some are high on drugs, some are desperate, some are violent. Banking your safety on the hope that a sound will scare someone is gambling with your life. And fourth, if you rack the shotgun and they do not leave, you have now committed to shooting them. You escalated the confrontation. You cannot claim you were scared if you were confident enough to make noise and give away your position. Prosecutors love this. It shows you were not in genuine fear. You were trying to intimidate. And intimidation is not self-defense. The correct procedure is this. If you hear an intruder, you retrieve your defensive gun, you get into your safe room, you call 911, and you wait. If the intruder tries to enter your room, you give one verbal warning. Stop, or I will shoot. If they continue, you shoot. No racking for effect, no tactical sounds, just decisive action when legally justified. Myth number 3. Shoot to wound. This is the most dangerous myth on this list. The idea is that if you have to shoot someone, you should aim for their legs or arms. Wound them. Stop the threat without killing them. This shows restraint. This keeps you out of legal trouble, and it is completely wrong in every possible way. Here is the reality. If the threat is not severe enough to justify lethal force, you cannot shoot at all. Not in the leg, not in the arm, not anywhere. Shooting someone is always considered lethal force, even if you aim for the leg, because bullets are unpredictable. A shot to the leg can hit the femoral artery and the person bleeds out in under a minute. That is lethal. A shot to the arm can hit the brachial artery, also lethal. You cannot predict what a bullet will do after it hits, so legally, shooting to wound is still lethal force, which means if the threat does not justify lethal force, you cannot shoot, period. If the threat does justify lethal force, you shoot center mass until the threat stops. You do not aim for limbs. Why? Because limbs are small moving targets. In a high-stress life or death situation, you will miss, and missed shots are bullets flying into your neighborhood, into your family, into bystanders. That is negligent. You shoot center mass because it is the largest target and gives you the highest probability of hitting what you are aiming at. And you shoot until the threat stops, not until they are wounded, not until they fall down, until they stop being a threat. This might mean 1 shot, it might mean 5 shots. You do not count rounds, you assess the threat. If you shoot someone in the leg and they are still attacking you, you have failed to stop the threat and you are still in danger. Shooting to wound is Hollywood fantasy. It does not work in reality. It is not legal justification, and it will get you killed or arrested. Do not do it. Myth number 4. Bullets tumble and create massive wound channels. This myth says that rifle bullets tumble inside the body and create devastating wounds. The bullet goes in small and comes out big. Military rounds are designed to tumble. This is why rifles are so deadly. And it is mostly wrong. Here is the reality. Some bullets tumble, some do not. It depends on bullet design and velocity. Military FMJ rounds like M193 and M855 can tumble after hitting tissue because they are long and not very stable. When they hit, they can yaw and fragment. This does create larger wound channels than a stable bullet, but this is not consistent. Sometimes they tumble, sometimes they do not. It depends on what they hit and how fast they are going. Modern defensive ammunition is designed not to tumble. It is designed to expand. Hollow points and soft points expand on impact. They create larger wound channels through expansion, not tumbling. This is more reliable and more predictable. So the idea that all bullets tumble is wrong. The idea that tumbling is what makes rifles effective is also wrong. Rifles are effective because of velocity. A rifle bullet travels at 2 to 3 times the speed of a handgun bullet. This creates a temporary wound cavity through hydrostatic shock. The temporary cavity is much larger than the permanent wound channel. This causes more tissue damage. This is why rifles are more lethal than handguns, not because of tumbling, because of speed. Understanding this matters because it affects ammunition choice. If you think tumbling is what makes bullets effective, you might choose FMJ rounds. But FMJ rounds overpenetrate. They go through your target and into whatever is behind them. Hollow points expand and stop. For defensive use, expansion is better than tumbling. Choose your ammunition based on what it actually does, not on myths about what bullets do inside bodies. Myth number 5. You should carry your gun with an empty chamber. This myth says that carrying a gun with a round in the chamber is unsafe. The gun could go off accidentally. You could shoot yourself. It is better to carry with an empty chamber and rack the slide if you need to shoot. This is called Israeli carry, and while it works in some contexts, it is suboptimal for civilian defensive carry. Here is why. Drawing and racking under stress is difficult. You need both hands. You need time. You need fine motor skills. In a sudden violent encounter, you might not have any of these. Your support hand might be injured, you might be grappling with an attacker, you might have a fraction of a second to respond. Needing to rack the slide adds complexity and time. Every defensive shooting instructor will tell you that fights are decided in seconds. Adding an extra step to your draw stroke could cost you your life. Modern firearms are safe to carry with a round in the chamber if you follow basic safety rules. Use a quality holster that covers the trigger guard. Do not put your finger on the trigger until you are ready to shoot. And do not carry a gun with a faulty safety or trigger. If you follow these rules, the gun will not fire unless you pull the trigger. Period. The myth persists because people are afraid. They do not trust themselves or their equipment. And I understand that fear, but the solution is training and quality gear. Not carrying an unloaded gun. If you are not comfortable carrying with a round in the chamber, you need more training, not a different carry method. Myth number 6. Revolvers are more reliable than semi-autos. This myth says that revolvers never jam. Semi-autos can fail to feed or fail to eject. Revolvers just work every time. Pull the trigger and it goes bang. This was true 50 years ago. It is not true today. Modern semi-autos from quality manufacturers are extraordinarily reliable. Glock, SIG, Smith & Wesson M and P. These guns run tens of thousands of rounds without failures. The reliability gap between revolvers and semi-autos has closed. Meanwhile, revolvers can fail. Timing issues can cause the cylinder to bind. Dirt under the ejector star can prevent the cylinder from closing. A high primer can lock up the gun. And if a revolver does fail, you cannot clear it quickly. You are done. With a semi-auto, most malfunctions can be cleared with tap rack procedures in under 2 seconds. So why does the myth persist? Because revolvers have fewer moving parts. They seem simpler, and simple seems more reliable. But engineering has advanced. Semi-autos are reliable now, and they offer higher capacity and faster reloads. For defensive use, a quality semi-auto is the better choice for most people. Revolvers still have a place, but the reliability argument is no longer valid. Myth number 7. Shooting someone will knock them down or throw them backwards. This myth is pure Hollywood. In movies, when someone gets shot, they fly backwards and slam into walls. This does not happen in reality. Here is why. Physics. Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If a bullet had enough energy to throw a person backwards, the recoil would throw the shooter backwards with equal force. This does not happen. Bullets transfer energy through penetration and tissue damage. They do not transfer kinetic energy like a baseball bat. When someone is shot, they fall because they lose muscle control, lose consciousness from blood loss, or decide to fall because they think that is what you are supposed to do, but they do not fly backwards. This myth matters because it creates unrealistic expectations. If you shoot someone in self-defense and they do not fall down immediately, you might think you missed. You might panic. You might stop shooting when you should continue. Understanding that people do not always fall when shot prepares you mentally for reality. Keep shooting until the threat stops, not until they fall. Myth number 8. You need to train like you fight. This myth says that your training should replicate real gunfights. Stress, movement, chaos. If you train in static controlled conditions, you will fail in dynamic situations. So you should train with loud music, strobe lights, people yelling at you, and complex scenarios. This is partially true and mostly wrong. Yes, you need some stress inoculation. Yes, you need to practice drawing from concealment and shooting while moving. But the foundation is fundamentals. Grip, stance, trigger control, sight alignment. If your fundamentals are weak, no amount of tactical training will fix it. You need to spend 90% of your training time on boring static drills, slow fire, controlled strings, diagnosing errors. Only after your fundamentals are solid should you add complexity. Most shooters do the opposite. They skip fundamentals and jump straight to tactical drills because fundamentals are boring. Then they wonder why they cannot hit targets under stress. You cannot train like you fight if you cannot shoot. Master the basics first, then add stress. So those are the myths that will not die. Stopping power does not exist. Racking shotguns is tactical stupidity. Shooting to wound is illegal and ineffective. Bullets do not always tumble. Carry with one in the chamber. Modern semi-autos are reliable. Shooting does not knock people down. And fundamentals matter more than tactics. These are facts. They are supported by data, by expert consensus, and by decades of real-world evidence. And yet people will still argue with you. They will still repeat the myths, and Hollywood will keep making movies where heroes shoot guns out of hands and bad guys fly through windows. Ignore them, know the truth, and base your decisions on reality, not fantasy. That is the complete breakdown of gun myths that will not die. If this video changed how you think about firearms, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. Subscribe because we have covered a lot of ground. 15 videos, buying guides, myths, training, resources. This is the foundation you need to make informed decisions. Hit that notification bell. See you in the next one.